Welcome, everyone, to Voices with Vervaeke. I'm very excited to be here today with Tataya Bailey and Rachel Hayden. Many of you have already met Rachel on my channel before. Tataya was someone I met last year when I was in Bergerac, and I was impressed by what she was doing there. And we've talked back then about she and I having a public conversation about the work she does. And Rachel is someone who has been working with Tataya and will give us, I guess, the view from the inside of the practice. I have some familiarity with it, but it was only an introductory taste. It wasn't anything significant or profound, but nevertheless, I was impressed. So I'm going to let each one of you, and take your time, please, introduce yourself, how you're interested in my work, and why you're here today. Start with you, Tataya.
Thank you, John. I'm going to start by saying it's Tataya, like papaya.
Oh, Tataya. Sorry, I forgot that.
Yeah. No worries. I say, if you think about papaya, you'll reach Tataya. So it's my line. And what I want to share is, I started my career, John, in a traditional way, like being a lawyer in Venezuela and having the external setup. And with the illusion or the young excitement to help people. I've always loved working with people. And to my unpleasant surprise, finding myself on the other side in that career, I'm not helping people. I'm sitting in a desk with a bunch of paperwork. And, when is it that I'm going to actually help people? And very quickly, I found like my first kind of life crisis where, this is not the idea, is not the reality that I thought. And my reality fell apart. And I was in Venezuela at the time, and I found yoga as a means to develop the interiority that I was longing. I felt such a void inside of me. And it was through that, one breath, one movement at a time, that I shift my attention from outward to inward to discover then who I am and what am I about. And all I knew is I just need to do yoga. So I sold everything that I had and went to India to become a yoga teacher. And it was an incredible experience. It was like phase 2 of my life, personal, but also career. And that really opened up a beautiful path, about 17 years of developing myself as an instrument, like the interior, inside outside job. And I had a beautiful opportunity to share that with people and to help others to refine and build and know themselves as an instrument. But then some years later, I hit my the next ceiling, I'm going to call it. And that was seeing the value and the fullness of the self and the being through this practice. I started to ask myself, what is this for if it doesn't translate into relationships? Like, you can come to the mat and become present and become at ease and embodied. But there was so much struggle in the relational field. And at that time, in this inquiry, I started to play with T group and authentic relating and circling and mixing embodiment with these relational practices, which were perfect. Circling really was a place where I went deeper. I had a certification with Circling Europe, and I did in New York, and facilitated like 500 circles online. And this led me where I am today, in that in the relational practices, which was perfect, there was a way that myself as an instrument was being activated. I had a weekend, I was in New York, we were in a circle with John Thompson, in a big circle, and I felt so much in my body. And circling, we use words to, get each other's world. But I was with so much, I didn't know what to do with it. And John and I locked eyes. And what ended up happening, John, is I took a leap. I moved towards John, inhabiting something that I didn't understand. I was like, is this allowed? Do I have a context for it? And what ended up happening is John and I, with eyes locked, had this whole experience where I became this dark force and creepy creature crawling towards him. And he was terrified, and it had an arc that we lived without knowing what it was. And the fear turned into curiosity, the curiosity into connection. And then we ended up in a really deep connected place without speaking words. And I had my first embodied meeting with another without knowing what it was. And then in the last weekend of that certification, they brought a woman called Elanya Forsberg, and she had a body of work called Avalon. And I noticed the way that she met with people and the way that that people felt seen. There was something about her in the relational field that was really curious to me, and she would call it trauma and healing work. I thought at the time, because I didn't have any significant trauma, that work wasn't for me, but like all my arrows were pointing that direction. I ended up going to her first workshop in the US, in Virginia. And in that workshop, John, I discovered capacities in me I didn't even know I had. There, she had the context to move from an embodied place and enact that which was alive. And I became like a sort of shapeshifter. Like I was able to do these things. And by the end of the workshop, I said, oh my gosh, this lives in me. I am Avalon. And that led to a beautiful 4 years of mentorship where we facilitated in Europe and in the US. It was incredible to serve humanity from bottom-up approach and learn through experience. The framework was very simple. And unfortunately, as startups happen, the organization fell apart. And 4 years after, I had the opportunity to use this 4-year experience alongside with myself as an instrument and all my previous kind of like tools. And that was when I met your work, John. It was, I think, 2019 with Meaning Crisis.
Wow.
And I had a whole experience with you and your frameworks, John. I would hear your videos and I would feel invited into my body of work with the clarifying distinctions that I didn't even know. Like you were describing my work, like the participatory knowing.
Wow.
And I was having these incredible insight and aha moments thanks to your frameworks. And it was a big part what helped birth what Prisma Leadership is today, actually, and to deliver it in a teachable way so people could learn. You wouldn't have to come having all these capacities in place, but broken down like the mechanics of how this mutual reciprocal opening can be used to grow, heal, and expand. So that's going to be, I'm going to pause here because I know I said a lot, but.
Yeah, Tataya, what you said was totally beautiful and really deeply resonates with my experience of Prisma. I didn't know what to expect going into it at all. I had, a taste of it in Bergerac at the Respond Retreat, and then the full meal in Boulder last fall. And it was like jumping into the deep end of relationality, like to the point where, like Tataya said, I had to take this leap of faith of sorts, and kind of, she calls it revealing yourself, but there's this, like, you have to let your heart play the melody that it wants to play. You have to let that come out, and you have to dare to show that vulnerability. And then it starts to interact with the melodies of other people and you start to co-transform with each other, but under the warm, watchful eye of this agapic presence of Tataya and the other facilitators and the people that you're working with. And all that's assisted by this really incredible structure, preparatory exercises, ways to wrap up the whole process after the main part of it is done, so that you're getting this, like, something that moves towards beneficial transformation, and you don't just have a series of really fun, like, psychodrama embodiment experiences, that kind of you can tell about at a cocktail party or something. Instead of that, you have, you come in with a strong intention, and Tataya is just holding this fiercely loving agapic attention toward us, intention and attention toward the people participating in the process. So that was my experience of it. And, I came away, like, I had over 2 weeks, like maybe 16 nights where after the full Prisma experience, where I dreamed of Prisma, and it was like the same dream every night. I was standing in the opening of what's called the arena, fittingly for John, for your work. And like the bell had just gone off to open the arena, the core practice. And there's this like charge in the air, like that ozone that you smell in a deep pine forest or something. This like, just like kind of intimidatingly intense energy that's full of possibility and deep relationship. And I was just still in that presence of that opening, and people were having these meetings, like Tataya described, like all around me in each dream. They were, going through these like serious play activities that were carrying them through meeting and then unmeeting. And I was just there in the midst of it. And that just, I think, shows a little bit about how deeply it impacted me to come out of that experience. Like not just what happened to me personally and all the transformations I went through. I had like a full-blown mystical experience on one of the days, like aided by the rest of the team. It was a relational mystical experience. So other people were able to like catch the charge from me and pick it up in this very oceanic sense, what Alexander Bard would call like the infinite now. We were kind of just like floating in this like glowing bodhisattva like presence at one point, and so the experiences ranged from incredibly profound and like bequeathing of like a new dharma for me, even in my life, all the way to like working through, shadow stuff, having alternate childhood experiences, having, working through archetypal symbolism and kind of tribal imagery between people, to, just even like, and then just the dirt, like the, sex and violence and like nastiness and all the other stuff too. And it was all like welcome there, and it was all material for that relationality, which I found so beautiful and so like accessible to me, even though often intimidating. Like Tataya says, like every time an arena opens, you're like, oh shit, like here we go.
That was wonderful, Rachel. So between the two, I think we've got a very good introduction to Prisma. Two things, of course, that are resonating very deeply with me is about how this is non-propositional and embodied and enacted. It's obviously imaginal in an important sense. It's obviously has some ritual dimensions. It's transferring outside of the practice. And given what you just said, Rachel, it's obviously transforming different levels of the psyche. So all of that's at work. And then, of course, I've been talking quite a bit lately about relationality as ultimate ground, and so all of these things are resonating with me right now. Maybe it would help. The best thing would, of course, be to participate in this, but we can't do that. Mm-hmm. If you could describe a little bit more concretely for the people who are not familiar, what kind of thing would people be doing? And give an indication in your description, please, of the relationship between the spontaneity and the structure that you both pointed to. There's this interplay between spontaneity and structure that seems to be important.
Yeah.
So please.
Yeah, that's excellent, John. Because one of the things that was important to me in developing this approach, after all the things that I learned in a very, let's call it, feminine container of emergence, when I learned this through Avalon, was containment. I was so oriented towards how can Prisma hold a crucible inside and be able to like press against something that is like solid for the type of work to happen inside in a safe and grounded way. So one thing that I really feel in a way proud about Prisma is the container in itself. And the container is set by very specific values that we identified that are required for each person, including facilitation, because we're all tested. Can we hold this in agape love? Is really an ongoing test, and we don't know until we know. So these values in which every player needs to orient from to be together and create the type of conditions for these parts and places that tend to hide in the unconscious to unconceal. So values is a big piece, and we have a set of values. And then we have rules and guidelines, what we do and what we don't do, that are upfront and clear. So everyone that comes to Prisma has an introduction of what is holding us outside and informing how we're playing together and from what place are we orienting. And then there's like the mechanics also. That's great, because one of the things that I was present with, John, is when I did this work, it was kind of like, well, you're either a very embodied person and you can do the meeting, or you're not. And so maybe this work is not for you. So one thing that I was deeply caring for is, no, wait a second. Like, what is the mechanics that can be taught to anyone to develop the muscles to actually be able to do a meeting in whichever grade? It doesn't matter. So there are very carefully designed practices to develop the type of skills and capacities that are required to be able. It's interesting. There's a moment, I was talking with Daniel Thorson and Rachel this week. There's a moment where you are equipped with all the tools. I use the hero's journey, a metaphor. So I give you all the tools, and that includes the practices to build the skills. But then there's another moment where, okay, you got the tools and you drop in an arena where, you are left to experiment and experience. Can you actually do it? And it's kind of like where the rubber meets the road. So day number 1, it's a whole intro day where we are practicing these mechanics that leads us to being able to take a leap and enact something and like kind of give yourself to the relational space, like trust the relationality of the group to kind of jump into the cold plunge in a way. So you practice all of that the first day, and by the end of day number 1, you are like in the arena, and we practice the arena for 3 straight days. Now, inside of the arena, nothing ever is the same. We have some patterns that we've noticed and some different expressions that come, like Rachel was saying. So you can meet anger, for example. Anger is not something we have a context for in our greater life, and we're not taught on how to be with this. And the arena is a space where you can taste and go for and allow the bigness of your anger in connection with another. And there's a way we do it that makes it safe. So all the range of emotions are kind of elicited through the relational field using resistance, the friction, the activation. You were having conversations with Seth Allison about IFS.
Yes.
And it was very interesting to me, because what happens in Prisma inside of the arena is we ride the intensity, the uncomfortability, the amygdala firing, fight, flight, freeze, and we use that and bring it into the relational field to unwind it together and discover what's on the other side. So on day number 4, we close the arena. So all the ways that you open, all the multiple times you have to experience taking the leap and trust yourself and the group to let go of control and to embody something that you don't know, to drop into the unknown. And on the 5th day, we have a whole day integration where all these insights and realizations are translated into a pathway to go home and identify kind of like a new way that was birthed, or like a peek into your future self, and identify an old way and bring those homes with a particular integration program that I use using Integral Coaching Canada and Integral Theory, that is designed to help people actually bring about the change in an ongoing way in their lives. And they have to do something about it. Those openings close, like those ways and that access that they have. I mean, some of them change you forever, like Rachel was saying, but some of them, you got to go to the gym in your daily life and work on the muscles to ground that new way of being. And so that's a place where we emphasize after the transformational experiences, the integration is up to the person when they go home, so they can actually create the change that they want, and they get to give it the meaning. So we work with them for them to find the words and give it the meaning that would work for them to transfer that, in their daily life.
Thank you for watching. This YouTube and podcast series is by the Vervaeke Foundation, which in addition to supporting my work, also offers courses, practices, workshops, and other projects dedicated to responding to the meaning crisis. If you would like to support this work, please consider joining our Patreon. You can find the link in the show notes. So maybe I'll ask this question and maybe we'll move to Rachel. Thank you for that, Tataya. You mentioned Seth Allison, and I've been talking to quite a few people, Kashra and others, about parts work. Is that what's coming up for people? Is it a particular possible identity or part, or what is it that's coming up for people? And then are they enacting it? Are they being called to a certain way of moving or posturing? Are they called to move towards other people? Like, I'm trying to get at what's happening non-verbally, such that people feel this tremendous connectedness. Because this is what I hear you both saying. There's a tremendous connectedness to oneself. Things are being revealed and disclosed. And then there's a tremendous connectedness to other people because the relationality is shaping that. So you're both nodding. So I'm tracking that well. So I want to get, if we could do, like Rachel, since you've recently done it, maybe give us a more concrete, specific thing. I'm aware that you might not want to spill your guts. So if you don't want to do that, that's fine. But where you want, like I did with Seth, I let him sort of take me through. And so what specifically happened? What came up? Like, how are you called? How did those two connect, those two religios, the vertical and the horizontal? How did they come to you, and how did you feel that you could properly embody and enact them?
Yeah. It's kind of a wonderful mystery on some level, but I have a great example for this. So,
okay.
Like Tataya said, like Prisma has this like radiance in the name, right? It's like you can tap into things in you that have been like left out or repressed or unspoken or undeveloped or something. You can bring that forward, but also through the process, it's like new colors are appearing in the rainbow between, you and the other players. And so like you can bring those home. You can have this like new neon blue or something that you bring home with you. So for example, like in Bergerac, this was like the second time I think we even did it. So fresh to the arena, you start in a circle, and we are invited to maybe use some words as needed. So like to kind of like a statement of like intent or what we're bringing, what's alive for us that we want to bring into it. It's not like words are forbidden in the arena by any means, but it's kind of that parabolic knowing that you talk about. So I said, I have love and I don't know how to give it. Right. So, and then we're looking around at each other in the circle, and we're seeing where the energy might or might not connect with people, and locking eyes. And then like, maybe there's like oh, no, not quite, or, that kind of thing. And another participant came over to me and was just kind of like, sniffing this out, sort of like, is this going to be, a meeting? And he and I were like, yeah. And so we felt the energy and kind of went off to the side of the room. And we, it was really like me working with like masculinity, like how to interact with men specifically in this way of like not necessarily sexual, like kind of in a just fully human way. And he and I, like, we did this without any kind of design. We became children. We became brother and sister,
Mm.
And at a certain point, once you give yourself over, you have you take the brave leap into the process, then it takes you. Then it's like you put on the costume and it becomes you for the duration of the event, even though you have this like witness consciousness still available to you in the background, right? You might be like, what is going on at certain moments, but you're just carried into it. And so he was my little brother, and I could feel him like needing my guidance, needing my support. I helped him make friends with another kid in the neighborhood. Tataya took on this role of like another kid, and sort of we built a fort, and all this stuff was happening, right? Very like childlike, beautiful moment. And I was able to like live this life as the older sister that I never was in real life, and be able to like really experience trying to help him. Like, I remember thinking like, what would mom say? What would mom do here? And I remember trying to like act like I knew what I was doing when I didn't know what I was doing because I was only 11, right? Like, and it felt like I was like really trying to learn how to like care for this kid. And so we had this like extremely beautiful like relationship where I was giving love in this like pure childlike way, and like struggling to come to terms with like who I was developing into as a person, and it just helped me open up this like more clear like interaction with men, to be able to say like, here is this like purity at the heart of relationality that was so wonderful to go through.
So let me I want to slow this down and open up the phenomenology and the functionality. So you got this relationship with the other participant, and what's happening is not a conceptual, but an enacted clarification of how to be with masculinity. That's what I heard you saying.
Mm-hmm.
But that is also, there's also a clarification going on within you about,
yes,
right? About the different, yes. Mm-hmm. And those two are sort of speaking to each other, correcting each other, guiding each other. Is that correct?
Exactly. And he's like, I want to go into the house. I want to like, like, is he going to be friends with me? And he's asking me these questions to help egg me on into the verticality of my development as I'm hopefully helping him do the same.
And so I take it then there are these sort of symbolic things you're saying to each other. They're part of the imaginal, your enactment, but you're also moving in some way. You're acting out, you're pantomiming certain scenarios. Is that like little micro narrative unfolding? Is that correct?
In that case, we literally built like a fort out of like some chairs and blankets in the room. Yeah. And hid and like we're in it. And then like a neighbor boy, came over, and he was upset about his family situation and crying. And then I had to help my younger brother, so there were these and like little games that we would play, like kid games and things like that. So, yeah.
So there's a lot of serious play going on. There's a lot of imaginal augmentation, and you're actually enacting it, and you're getting the dialogical and the vertical interacting, mutually correcting each other. How do you know when it's staying on track, and how do you know when it's going off track?
I think after I say something, Tataya, you can definitely correct me on this, but there's a feeling this it's autopoetic, John. It's like really just that you feel the liveness of that scenario. I saw like a TV show once where, kids put on Halloween costumes and it like made them into these monsters or whatever. It's what it feels like. If it's going well, you are just being carried by the costume. You're no longer like deliberately improvising anything. It's like it's pulling you in, and you can feel that energy, and you're staying in touch with those preparatory practices, helping you by like paying attention to the other person in certain ways, and yourself and the relationship and the space around you. So you're always attuning and really attending. I mean, ultimately, I felt like what I was doing was just trying to pay attention to what was happening. And then if that fades out, then it's done. Then you move on to something else. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to take it from there in the word attention, because it is developing a capacity to pay attention and follow what is alive. So again, not what you know. You're not planning you don't know, like moment to moment, you're in the discovery with the other and inhabiting the story, inhabiting the archetype that is coming to life as you allow that to take place. And there is room for like trial and error, John, because it's a training. You're learning that capacity. So sometimes you need to check with the other person, or you need to reveal something, or like, oh, I'm completely lost here. I'm actually, what is it that we're doing here? So the beautiful thing is all that arises is work. It's valuable to go deeper in either direction. So if you find yourself in the mind, like trying to force or make something happen, you will get the feedback loop. You will like the space is created. So the feedback loop invites and encourages for what is the deeper layer, because whoever you're with, it's all in connection in relation to another, will give you the feedback loop, which is what's at the core of the workshop. Is something that I call the Prisma core, is this ability, this practice to check in with yourself. There's a whole world there to express from that place what is most alive in relation to what's happening here. You have many things that you can be aware of, and then take in the other person. And how do we do that? And what conditions would you need to be in to take in another person, and then to be in this infinite feedback loop again and again and again, moment to moment?
That's really important. So it feels a little bit like, what happens in Dialogos, or one of Kars's notion of an infinite game. So when this was done, Rachel, like what happened to those two dimensions for you? Did you feel more? Was there a kind of sense of integration vertically, a sense of being able to see things in the world that you couldn't see before? How did the transformation go beyond the moment for you?
Yeah, I'll tell you, other people have started calling me like their big sister, their aunt.
Oh.
In different situations.
So other people are noticing it in you. That's my touchstone criterion. Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Without me saying anything about Prisma, or anything, people just, I don't think he'd mind. Yesterday, Robert Gray was like, oh, you're like a big sister to me or something, like it's that kind of like,
and when
feedback,
when you get that, when you get that feedback, like you did from Robert, language is so useless in some ways. When you get that you get that feedback, you get that recognition in a deep sense. What does that do within you? I wanted to say feel, but I don't want to just talk about feelings. Like, what does that do within you?
Yeah, I mean, it's gratifying because it feels like it fits this need in me that was like, I actually wished I could have been an older sister as a kid instead of an older brother in my case. I feel like that would have been more appropriate. And like to give to people in that way it's very gratifying. It's like this role that I've like yearned for in a way. And so it kind of came out of me in the spontaneity in Prisma without me ever thinking about that at all during the workshop. But it's now giving me this niche construction situation, right? Like people are calling me this, and then I'm becoming more of that. And I'm like, oh, this is really meaningful to me to play this role in people's lives, to have this grounding presence for them.
Right. So you get, I like that. You get that niche construction. And Tataya, you talked about sort of a reciprocal opening that occurs. That's very, very powerful. And so, Rachel, this has brought some clarification to your ongoing process. I don't want to call it transitioning, but whatever you want to call it, right? That your aspirational process, you've called it in the past. Maybe that's the better thing to call it. And so, and like I say, I'm sorry. This is the stuff I really want to get into. I know you're trying to, but so what I'm getting here, what I'm hearing, right? Obviously, there are words, but they're being put in service of the non-propositional, the procedural, the perspectival, and really profoundly the participatory, right? Can both, maybe Rachel from the inside, well, from the experience, and then Tataya from all the things you've seen, sort of as somebody holding the space. There's a kind of understanding and clarification here that goes beyond conceptual understanding and clarification. And I know this is hard to put into words. And so we're all struggling together. I'm not like, come on, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. We're playing together. But you know what I'm trying to get at? I'm trying to get at, we've got this connectedness and clarification, but it's not conceptual. Other people are recognizing it. And I know I'm asking, I'm asking both of you to go to the horizon, go to the limit, but that's where I want, what is that? What is that non-conceptual, or not purely, that's a better way of putting it, not purely conceptual understanding that other people are clearly recognizing and that you feel deeply appropriate inhabiting? That's what I'm hearing you say, both of those.
Yeah. Wow, this is definitely...
Well, you knew you were talking to me and it was going to end up doing this.
I willingly took this on. Yes. It feels there's so much meaning in it for me. And it's sort of like, I don't know, I feel like I'm already slipping off the mission that you just gave me, but that there's this it is embodying the relationality and then watching yourself as the relata shift and change, and then be able to wait,
that's helpful. Just wait, that was helpful. There's kind of a figure ground reversal that happens for you, where you're looking, instead of looking from the relata at the relationship, you're going to the relation and then looking through that at, right? So you have replaced yourself in the old meaning of replace. There's a new placement that is taking place, and then from that new standpoint, you have a different stance towards the relata. Did I get you right? Is that fair?
That's totally right. Yeah, it's that. It's like Tataya said. She was like, "I am Avalon." I am Prisma. It's you get that sense of somehow we all are Prisma doing it. I don't know, maybe other people don't experience that way, but I definitely did. I was like, this is, and then that little, that little me that's bouncing around that, becomes different me is can fit into different niches, more and less appropriately, but never finding an ultimate stopping point. Every time you have a meeting in Prisma, it's a new thing. It's a new thing. It's a new thing. It's a new thing. You wipe the slate clean, and the next meeting is totally different than the last, probably. So you're getting to experience, you're trying on these different selves. And so coming away from that, I was that self, that older sister self, really, there is something gut level, profound, and in my heart about that. That was that's the self I want to put in my closet.
And when I hear you, Rachel, what comes for me too is this, the way that through life experiences we close, contract, and we carry so much in our bodies. One thing that I say in Prisma is the body knows more than the mind. So through the Prisma experience, people are able to empty out and find ways to open again and recover the experience of anger in a way that is good and right, and explore and recover the experience of grief as a beautiful way to be more in contact with life, to recover the connectivity in itself, the continuity of contact with life itself, and the life as relational. So then you have these imprints where you were brave and courageous to take a leap where normally, in life, everything is at stake, but you had this repeated imprint that not only you took the leap and it was good for you, but it served the group. You became a key for one another, and it helped another, in a way that you couldn't have ever imagined. Whatever expression you did that you could have hold back, and that we tend to hold back in life, you became the first leaper, the first responder to burst into a new space in the room, a new reality that was implicit, and now it's explicit, and then it, poof, it opens for more.
So that was very helpful. So I'm holding these two words that you've both mentioned multiple times, often together. And of course, I love alliteration, attention and attuning. But now I'm hearing about the attuning, and especially what you said, Tataya, right? So there's like we have these constitutional tonos, these fundamental opponent processing that we can't, right, that constitute who we are, like individuation and participation. And you just said what happens is, the person is going through this individuation, but they do it in service to the group. So they're learning, they're attuning how to coordinate individuation and participation. So instead of being antagonistic or alienated from each other, they're mutually resonating with each other. And then there's also, I'm hearing also finitude and transcendence. People are going into grief, which is, we've lost, we're finite, but they're also, they're not falling into despair because they have access to, ecstasis, standing beyond themselves, transcendence. And so they're also attuning those two. And so each is preventing the other from becoming an extreme. I'm hearing that there's profound attention you've been talking about, but there's the way the practice is unfolding is it's constantly attuning you, constantly saying, no, do these two together, do these two together, do these two together, do the horizontal and the vertical, do the individuation and the participation, do the finitude and the transcendence together. And of course, the flow of the movement, I take it, really helps give people an enacted sense of what that means. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in that fine tuning and that attuning, like selves as an instrument, attuning together and giving themselves into the relational field, what happens, what I see happening is the movement from what's off to congruent, like congruence into coherence, into synergy, that it's worked out at the individual and at a collective level. That is like magic, and it's a leveled field because at the same time we're meeting as humans. So it doesn't matter who you are in life and what you do and the roles. Like you walk in that arena and you're like naked with your humanity, and you're gonna meet right there the places where you feel or wounded or pain or contracted or unsure. It's gonna be in your face. There's no hiding. But it's beautiful because that's when it's your time to work, to like step into the cold plunge and normalize that. It's going to feel like, like you're not going to want to do it. Your identity might be at stake. The relationship might be at stake. It is such a risk for me every time, John, after doing 40 plus of these retreats, every moment, the nature of it is, I don't want to do it. And the beautiful moment of bursting and choosing, because everybody chooses, everybody has the agency to choose voluntarily to step into it for the healing to happen, it's key. So it's built in.
Okay, so two different questions come up for me from that. One is, I'm hearing that there's this almost musicality to what's going on. I'm wondering if people ever use musical metaphors. We're talking about attunement and self as instrument, and that alludes to music and people being in concert together. And then there's, it feels almost like dance, like there's movement and musicality, and dance is also in there. Of course, dance is a universal, it's primordial. I wonder if those kinds of metaphors come up for people. So that's sort of a phenomenology, functionality question. And then I have another question. Given what you just said at the very end there, Tataya, and you two can answer them however you want, whichever order between the two of you. It seems to me that with the risk, there's actually the very real possibility that people burst trauma or something comes up that can't be properly contained within Prisma that might need extensive therapeutic intervention, or a profound existential confusion that needs philosophical counseling. And so the first question was the one again about dance and musicality and movement. And then the other one is what is built into the structure of this to help properly discern those people who should not be doing this practice because it may prematurely expose them to material for which they do not have the proper developmental skills and sensibilities. So those are two questions. Again, please answer them between yourselves as you wish, and whichever one you want to answer. But if you could address both of them at some point, that would be great.
Yeah.
I'll take the plunge on the dance one.
Go for it. Yeah, and I'll take the second one. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I felt like dancing, I think for others, people mention the word dancing quite a bit. I feel like it's hard to remember exactly, but for me, that whole, every time there's a meeting, it is like a meeting in the dance. And like, is it going to be an intense, slam dance in a mosh pit kind of thing? Or is it going to be like a waltz? Like, who knows? Maybe both, maybe you'll invent a new type of dancing. But, as the musicality of it, to me, that's that like autopoetic relationality. That's like the music you're dancing to. And there's like definitely some agency in how you're interpreting that music and how you're interpreting the dance moves, even though it's not like a conscious, deliberate form of agency. You're just, you could take this one step or this other step, and everything you do matters so much in those moments. It feels like whether if you wiggle your little toe or your big toe on your other foot, it makes all the difference, right? Like, and so you really are listening hard to what's happening. You're trying to really tune in closely and also broadly to what's happening with the music of the event.
So Tataya, let me just respond to that before you answer the other question. So it sounds to me like there's something like a recovery of sacred dance. Dance has been reduced to entertainment like everything else, and there's a recovery of sacred dance in this. And
yeah, even though you're playing these roles that might be, sort of symbolic or depersonalized in some way, right? Like you get to step into them as yourself and feel like the sacred universality and your individuality in those dance moves
are playing together.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
Yeah.
Rachel had a meeting in the Prisma in Boulder, Star House, and it was about death. And he was having an experience. These are the type of things that happen, John, that where we start, it's not where we end, and we could have never imagined the magnificence of it.
Logo.
So yes, it's like, yes. So following that trail, there were benches around the room, and she was like in a kind of death experience, and my facilitator, Brigitte and I, who was one of my facilitators, were looking at Rachel, and I realized, wow, the bench is a wooden bench that you can open it, just like a coffin. I don't know why, like it occurred to us just to open the lid of the coffin, and what would happen, if Rachel goes inside. So the whole experience shifted to a group experience ritual to honor Rachel. And one of the people there started praying to her, and he felt in connection with his Greek lineage. I mean, we didn't know he wanted to be a priest. So he remembered this part of himself. So like the beauty and magic and sacred rituals that emerge, I could have never planned or dreamed, because it comes from the inside of the group, and it like draws in the network of people. Sometimes it's a whole group, sometimes it's a few. It doesn't matter, but it's pretty magnificent. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the rhythm of the scene unfolding has like movements to it too, like a symphony, right? Like in one part, you're laying in a coffin and with flowers on you, and then people are singing songs, and then someone starts chanting, and then they have this call and response. Like, what will she become? Will she become a mountain? She gets to choose. And like, there's a chorus that people start to, all say this together, like spontaneously. And then another, like, will she become the stars? She gets to choose. Will she be a river? She gets to choose. She gets to choose. She gets to choose, right? This starts building up this like repeated chant. And I'm hearing this, you know, like going through like terror of death. And then like this, also this like universal unfolding that led to this oceanic kind of experience. And I just felt it through my being, like, I choose life, you know, and I pushed open the lid of the coffin, and it was like the next movement of the symphony unfolds then. And it's this really amazing relation, like interaction with people. I can't even describe it shortly, but like it has that rhythm, right? Like it can take different turns.
So, I mean, and thank you. I mean, that's profound. And that sort of spontaneous, it's bottom up and then it gets shaped top down and the ritual emerges, but then it expresses itself. But I want to come back now to the second sentence. What if somebody said, I choose death, and because of trauma or psychopathy, and they move towards violence? Because that could happen in this kind of situation. Like, how are you on guard for that? How are you looking for it? So I want to really frame this question properly. I think what you're doing is amazing, or I wouldn't be talking to you. And I think it's precisely because I think it has tremendous power for transformation in it. There will always be, wherever there's tremendous power for transformation, there is a real possibility of evil in some sense coming present. And of course, I wouldn't have any worry with Rachel. I know her to be a fundamentally good person, and same thing with you. But given that we're considering the advent of the sacred, the birthing of new rituals by which it can express itself transformatively in individual and collective lives, and this is right on the nexus of this, it would be irresponsible, I think, if we did not seriously wrestle with this question.
Absolutely, John. Absolutely. So the bridge that I want to build from Rachel to the question around trauma is what I experience and see is the like wisdom embodied, like these, what emerges, and in words, like these incredible, profound truths. It feels to me like, wow, the beauty as a virtue, like all these virtues embodied in a way. So I'm gonna put that on the table then to transition into the trauma piece. And, you know, when I learned about this meeting enacting, that the workshop was working with trauma healing, and Alanya Forsberg is a psychotherapist, and so she was trained to deal with all sorts of cases, and we learned a lot. Who is it for and who is it not? And fallout. So I was able to benefit in a way from like the early years of Avalon, working with so many trauma, and because I'm not a therapist, and I was really holding what you're saying, John, like, okay, who is this for? Who is this not? And what happens in the event? First of all, we need to talk about how do we define trauma? And so Prisma has done research around what is the latest consensus on trauma healing. And Andrew Huberman has been an incredible influence too. And he did a study of Kerry Ressler about what actually are the conditions required to heal trauma. And first of all, in Prisma, we don't work with, I call it capital T traumas, the kind of events that happen to people that required professional attention in a one-on-one setting that is medical. So there is a intake process that happens to see if we're a fit.
Yeah. Okay.
I also like to use Robert Keegan's developmental stages, or like the orders, and kind of point to Prismas for people that are integrating their self-authoring mind, people that know that they are responsible for creating their reality, and they know that they need others to help them grow and heal and transform and expand. So Prisma really is set up for people that are integrated enough to choose the cold plunge and to also be able to like step into the fire of receiving the feedback loop and the hard things that you don't have context in the greater life. You will receive feedback that might take maybe never ever in your life you will get from a group that everyone is committed to do the same and have capacity to do that. And third, in Prisma, the way that we like to use the word trauma is using Carrie's framework of protective memories that are attached to the amygdala that are good for you, like survival skills that are good for you. You're a kid, you cut yourself with a knife. Well, it only needs to happen once to remember that you can't play with a knife and that it cuts. And those memories are great, but there are maladaptive memories that attach to the amygdala that bring about a response to a reality that doesn't match with what is really happening. Like a perfect example is, the mean uncle that you had when you were growing up that was bullying you. And so every time you see in the world somebody that is similar to that physicality, your heart beats and you feel frozen or whatever. So in Prisma, we get to decouple these maladaptive memories. I don't know why I'm going here. These maladaptive memories that are attached to the amygdala by kind of like IFS, by becoming aware of the responses in your biology, the heart beating, these fight, freeze, and flight responses. And instead of doing the failure patterns or the coping mechanisms, you have the opportunity to step into it. Voluntarily is one of the requirements, in a safe container with someone that didn't cause that pain, and feel it as much as you can, which happens in Prisma because you're going to have all the adrenaline. And the fourth piece is, after you feel it voluntarily with someone that didn't cause the pain, then you get to reframe and you get to birth a new narrative. So that's how we go about trauma healing in Prisma. And so far, I have to say, Prisma has the ability to get people triggered, and that's normal. We all get triggered. Like, what level of trigger do we have? That's what we need to pay attention to. So one of the things that we do is regulation, self-regulation and co-regulation. So people say Prisma feels like a medicine journey without the medicine. It feels really like you get into this parallel reality. But the great thing about it is, if somebody is not able to hold the context, John, somebody is dysregulated in such a way that they can't be in the context, then we help them one-on-one to regulate until they can come back into the game and play the game. So that's one of the ways that we work with it. Does that answer?
Yeah,
gives you
I think that's a very responsible answer. There is no practice, there is no panacea practice, and there is no perfect practice. So all I was asking for is the degree to which you're being responsible with virtue and virtuosity. And it sounds like you definitely gave me a good answer to that. A very detailed and sophisticated answer.
Can I chime in a little more
please
on that?
Then, Rachel, please.
Because I know how much you like avoiding self-deception. So I was thinking about this heading into this. And, Tataya and company also have like these practices. I don't know where you get them all from, but like the golden bow, where you like get to like listen in on other people constructively gossiping about you, essentially, which is a beautiful practice. So it's very much like kind of checking yourself, checking how other people view you. There are times for sharing like open, honest feedback, maybe bluntly with others as well about your experience with them, their experience with you. And then there's this incredible ending process, which I wanted to mention because I was like, so, at the end of it, I was like, all oceanic and in this like, bodhisattva understanding, and who even needs this take home stuff? Because I'm so, you know what I mean? Like I was in the clouds, very, very kind, but also blissed out. Right. And then Tataya's like, no, you got to write this stuff down. You got to hone down what you're going to take home with you. You got to do this. And I was like, no, I'm fine. And then she sits by me. She's like, that's not good enough. You need to get more specific. And I just started like pushing on her, like shoving her away from me, like pushing on her leg. And she's like, you can push me. You can bite me. I'm staying with you. I'm not going anywhere. You know, that level of dedication beyond my own level of dedication to myself. She was like there for me when I couldn't totally be. So, a lot of those kind of things and all the preliminaries going into it are really helpful.
Thank you for saying that, Rachel. John, can I close all this thought with the experience you had in Bergerac? So maybe you can trace something from the taste that you had into what we've shared about the continuity of contact in the relational space, that Prisma.
Yeah.
Or do you want to take it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there was, and I kept showing up because I found it very, very challenging. And I've been generally running with this heuristic, which is slightly dangerous. So I have to check in with other people that I love, that if I'm afraid to do it, I do it. And that's been largely very good. Same thing was happening there. I mean, we were literally doing continuity of contact practices. There was ones where we were holding sticks between two people or balloons. And I was surprised at, and I think this comes from me being very introverted and socially phobic, the degree of affective antipathy I was having towards this. So here I am, this guy that talks about continuity of contact and blah, 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 blah. But when I actually have to enact it and inhabit it, I was resistant to it. And then what I did is I committed to trying to plunge even more deeply into it and have it open me up. And so I got a sense. I'm not claiming we both agree this is just a taste, but I got a sense of how it could disclose to people a kind of performative contradiction, or at least an embodied hypocrisy, where somebody may be sincerely talking, or even with affect, talking about things like continuity of contact, but when they actually have to embody it and enact it, they find that they might be no, I don't want to do that. I'm deeply resistant to that. And that disconnect and that sort of maybe proto performative contradiction, that was really profound for me to notice that and to say, okay, here's a choice. You can just give in and withdraw and keep these two compartmentalized and isolated from each other. But my commitment to trying to overcome performative contradiction won the day, and so I kept going. It didn't mean that it stopped being uncomfortable, but it meant that I gained some agency with respect to the discomfort, and also I realized the value of having to connect. It's so funny for me to say this. The value of having to connect the propositional to the non-propositional in a way that really challenges a person aspirationally.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. That's exactly at the core of what I see, this serious playground to be able to afford and to like integrate those two. Like, it's kind of like where the rubber meets the road. We know all this idea, reality, kind of like the beginning of my journey with a lawyer. The idea, reality. Well, let's check and test the reality, not to make it wrong, but to point and to see the places that, we get to grow and expand in order to bring about, birthing this new change we want to see, because it has to come integrated. Like, it has to come down from the proposition to the participatory together. So I really appreciate that you shared that, because that's a way that I hold it. Yeah. And that's actually what Daniel Thorson said that he got the most out of, is like, wow, now he sees himself being that, bursting the bubble in his teams, or being the first responder and taking the risk, building the resilience with the uncomfortability, and seeing how when he does that, it gives permission for the other team members to open into a deeper reality where they're doing things they never dreamed they would do. And so this very important ability to burst the bubble, or to become that agent that like responds kind of, yeah. So
I would like to bring a little bit of cog-sci theory to bear on this, especially work I'm doing around the Imaginal. I talk about this process of re-exaptation. It's the idea that whenever we're moving through idea space, we're actually exapting how we navigate sensory motor space. All right. And so there's layers of exaptation. We exapt the sensory motor into the social. People are close to us or far from us, right? And we're moving towards them or away from them. And then we exapt that up into the abstract, right? The idea of reptiles is very far from the idea of triangles or something like that. We do all this. And there's more and more cog-sci around this. And part of what I hear you saying and part of how I experienced it is, I take this is up here, the propositional, and you drop it back down. It's almost like you let go of all the exaptation machinery. You drop it back down into the original sensory motor narration navigation. It gets alive again. It breathes again. And then you say, okay, now I'm going to re-exapt it back up, but it's going to be different than it was before. And so this is sort of like re-symbolizing the symbol. You let go of the exaptation. You drop back down into the sensory motor narration navigation, and then only after you've really lived it and moved around in it, then do you progressively re-exapt it back up through the social-cultural, and then back up into the abstract. And it seems to me that that's very much what's going on, because it wasn't just that I did this, as you were talking, it dropped down, but of course it's had an impact coming back about it gives me new ways of seeing, and then on the basis of that, new ways of seeing and being, and on the basis of that, new ways of talking. And so the conceptual also gets reconceptualized in a powerful way. So I just wanted to throw that in and see if that is if that's true to, for example, your experience, Rachel, and how you might be thinking about it, Tataya, theoretically.
Yeah, with that whole funeral death scene, I had come into that week like with the intention of facing death. That was like part of our homework, was to have an intention coming in. And that's, that can be really abstract, obviously. And the like line that came to me, like the Dharma that sort of appeared to me after that whole experience was, every step is birth and death.
Mm.
And it was like a way of life for me, as well as the Dharma and the sense of the truth, like both senses of Dharma, right? And so I was like, and now I'm under with Brigitte, one of the coaches from Prisma. I'm going on walks through the woods, and I'm saying, I'm giving metta to myself. May every step be birth and death.
Oh,
right?
wow.
Like, may I
Wow.
experience this in every step. And she's guiding me through this, how to revivify the symbol and then bring it back to the abstract, and kind of keep doing this.
Yeah, to and froing.
This process.
Yeah. That's very powerful. That's very powerful. And does that land for you, Tataya, as well?
Yes. It's Aporia is one of the distinctions that I use also in Prisma, thanks to you, John. And it's this, I think it fits. It's like breaking the frame to create new frames.
Right,
kind of like
right.
This movement that you're saying absolutely fits.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, that's very good. Yeah. Frame breaking to get down, frame making to come up with the space in between is the Aporia, the aporetic space, the Aporia. That's very good. That's very good. That's very helpful. Do people get there? Are some people sort of like in Aporia where they don't know how to go forward, and they're waiting and they're sort of searching? Does that happen too?
Yes, it does. And we have it happens. It tends to happen in the arena from, experiencing the meeting, and after it, I mean, there's a bunch of insights and realizations that arise, but before, there's a moment that we have them integrate individually and come back to themselves. And at times we encourage no talking yet, just let it simmer. There's a disorientation, and what they thought it was or what they knew it's not what they're inside of. Like, for example, one of the things that the meeting is great for is unwinding pre-verbal wounds and pains and traumas. You didn't have a brain to make meaning of what happened, but you have a narrative that comes from that kind of developmental stage. So when you unwind and are able to release that, there's more that you can see now. And as an adult, the narrative shifts, but there's a moment to kind of like feel the opening, feel the shift, like somatically, energetically, before that comes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would say like many times I was confused or at a loss or in some kind of aporia through the week.
One of the things that I regularly admire about you, Rachel, is your honesty about being confused. And please take that as a serious compliment. Our culture is so beset by people who will not simply admit that they're confused on all sides. And you and I have talked about this before. And I really appreciate you just saying that now. I think very often that there's a space of aporia that has profound confusion in it. And then what that space does, confuse, things are fused together. The space actually allows things to come apart so that they can be reconfigured in a new way. So I think it's very important just to recognize that.
Yeah.
So ladies,
yeah,
Rachel, did you want to say something?
Like it to me, it was an important part to kind of, even though that witness in me might be like, what the fuck is going on once in a while, and I don't know if I'm a space amoeba or a mountain cave right now, but something's happening, and just the faith to continue through aporia.
Well, I
and
imagine
confusion.
having that ongoing taste and then seeing other people being lit up by the practice helps literally encourage those that are within it to keep going.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, ladies, we're coming to the close of our time together. This has been really wonderful. I'd like to give my guests the last word. So, again, whatever order you want to do and however you want to give the last word.
Thank you, John. I first of all, I want to thank Rachel for bringing herself and making this happen, like sharing her experience and connecting us, John. Again, it's great to see you, and I'm grateful for you holding the space in these conversations and the impact that your work has had in creating Prisma, in translating it in a way that people can get what is it that is happening there, not only to teach it, but like to spread the word and, to help others that are seeking to heal, grow, and expand, to know that this is available. So thank you so much for your inquiries and for helping translate some of the experiences into your framework. So
Two quick things. One is, I think if we're, serious about like a relationalist worldview ontology, like this is the kind of thing we need to be doing.
Yeah.
Number two, I'm just really happy to bring together two of my like big influences, shining stars in my developmental life and life in general. So that's it.
Thank you so much. And for all of those watching, as always, thank you for your time and attention.